I think a very opportune moment to have a segue into our next presentation by Heidi Upton and Barbara Ellmann and their exposition of aesthetic education practice and approach in New York City. And Heidi Upton is on our board and a president of the Maxine Greene Institute and a professor at St. John's College. Take it away, Heidi.
Oh, thank you, and hi, everybody. I was so inspired by those excerpts. So wonderful. I've got to use that last one in my class. I mean, that's so great. The trees. Okay, so there's Barbara. Can you see Barbara? Barbara, say hi. Okay, I'm going to do the intro to the video and just sort of explain what you're about to see. The video is about 34 minutes long, and then afterwards we'll have some time to talk, questions, and discussion. Okay, so you're going to see a course. You're going to see the course that's called The Creative Process, and it's at St. John's University, which is it's a university here in New York City in the borough of Queens in Jamaica, New York. And the experience here that we'll see in the video, it took place in the fall semester of 2022, so just happened. And we're going to be in the visual arts unit. So the whole course covers 3 units: visual arts, music, and dance. It did that semester. Sometimes I switch up the art forms. Okay, so the visual arts unit in this case happened at the beginning of the semester. So it was right as school was starting, and many of the students in the class were first semester college students, although others come from the second, third, and fourth years in their continuum. Also, core courses, of which creative process is one, they are open to all majors across the colleges. So it's a extremely varied population that is in the class usually. Okay, so let me look at my notes here. I did a lot there. Okay, so you're going to see a particular model of aesthetic education, but both Barbara and we met at what was then called Lincoln Center Institute, and we were teaching artists there. And it was a time when Maxine Greene was the philosopher in residence, and aesthetic education was, we were part of a laboratory, and we were talking about our practice and meeting together in this thing that we called the collaborative. And it was a very exciting time. And the traditional aesthetic education model that emerged during those years and is still in practice utilizes a teaching artist who is in the art form of the work that's under study. So a visual artist would be the teaching artist for a visual arts body of work, or a particular painting or whatever. And so on, you know. But I am a musician, and I do all 3 of the art forms. So this is a non-traditional. It's like outside of what is the norm of aesthetic education model. Okay, so that's one thing. But at the same time, the way I go about it uses all of the traditional student-centered, active learning, experiential, using concepts that are embedded in the work of art, in the art making, in the workshops that take place over a certain number of days. And then there's the work of art experience, and then the reflection. So it does all of those things. It's just that I'm the teaching artist and the professor. Okay, so what you're going to see is the workshop, like excerpts from the workshops prior to the work of art experience. In this case, the work of art experience, students traveled to Brooklyn to Barbara's studio. And so there's art making prior to the work of art experience in the classroom over several sessions. Then we move into the artist's studio. And again, we stray from the traditional model in a sense, is that because Barbara's there in the studio. Although the way I approach the course, it's all the performers are in the classroom, or in this case, we go to the studio. But if in the music unit, performers are in the room and they can interact with the students, and dancers come into the room and interact with the students. So because the course is called Creative Process, I'm very eager to have students witness and be in the presence of people who are very engaged in the creative process. Okay, so you're going to see little excerpts from the prior to the work of art experience in the classroom, and we have lots of discussions and you can see what they're doing. And then we go to Barbara's studio, and then there's a little visual of students reflecting in Barbara's studio. And then at the very end, Barbara and I have a kind of a rehashing of what we did. And that's it. And then stay with us, because then we will go to a question and answer and discussion. I'd love to hear what you think about the work that we've done. We had a very talented videographer, Sammy Amakri, who helped us with this video. Okay.
Prior to our visit to Barbara Ellmann's studio, over a series of workshops, students are led in an inquiry into this artist's work. Carefully scaffolded activities begin with addressing students from where they already are, asking them to think about the actions of memory. Guiding questions like, can you remember the last time you went swimming? What do you see in your mind's eye? Is it precise pictures? Are images combined with other memories, the weather maybe, or relationships with other people who are present? And we have begun to explore. How do we remember things? You remember that discussion? Like, do you see it like fully formed in your mind, or you just see hazy things or fragments of things? Because these are ideas that Barbara is thinking about. She spent her whole life thinking about, how do I put that feeling of memory onto a square? And so the idea of being subjective, like it's your own memory going onto the square, it's personal, and experimenting with how those things. So in the back is some of your work. If you want to just turn around and look at it and remember, I remember asking you, like, urban, like when were you in a city, or when were you by the seaside, or when were you in a landscape? And you did those things. Another thing that interests Barbara is textiles, things that pieces of material that have patterns on them, and that's our work back there. After we worked with textiles, and before that we were working with memory and abstracting memory, where did we leave off? Like, what was the last thing I've asked you to think about? Landscapes? Is that what, or what? What were you going to say, Adrian? The old travel thing. Remember, like places that you've been far away, or, you know. Yes, things that you've seen while traveling. Where does she get her ideas and her source material when she's traveling? Like, what does it look like when you're traveling in a car and you're looking out the window? How do you record something like that? Do you see still emotion, or is it a blur, or? Yes, Adrian.
Oh, I was gonna say how it's like, since you're moving in a car, everything's more like horizontal as well, because it's like.
Oh, right. So there are these lines going like that. So you're not thinking so much of the vertical, because that's sort of a still idea, that there would be a dominant idea of horizontal lines. That's great thinking. All right, so we left off with just starting to look at individual pieces. Do you remember that? And we have yet to think about how they might be arranged and gridded. And I was thinking maybe we could stand up and go start to look at that. Okay, but what is it about this that makes you, can you like separate yourself from the game thing?
Oh,
or?
yeah, no, that was kind of like a dumb observation.
Oh, okay.
I really love the kind of of gate thing, and then you see like the moon there, and it's like
There?
yeah, and then you kind of see like you see the illusion of like light going through the tunnel. I thought like it looks so good. I don't know, I really just love it.
It's almost as though you can put yourself in it.
Yeah,
You can go through the gate. You go in through the tunnel. What's the moon doing there? But anyway, never mind. Why don't we start thinking about how we could put these into a grid? Yeah. Okay. Are you going to stop there, or
Oh, there was
one
one.
more? Uh-oh. Wow.
Okay.
Okay. So are we going to ask Grace why she did that?
Grace, why did you do that?
They all remind me of danger. Like that one,
Oh, no
that one's
kidding.
swimming in the water, but the clouds are dark. And the water, yeah. And then that one has a shark inside overboard, so dangerous. And then the concept and the colors of the last one also looks dangerous.
And here I was in this wonderful mood. Oh, you want to try it? Okay, you try it, and then you go next. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to stick another push pin in here because it's bending.
So why did you do that?
Say it again.
Going to the sunset,
Going to the sunset.
Oh, I see. So we have a time lapse idea so that the sun is lowering and lowering. So there's a progression. So your eye goes,
Going to the midnight.
that's not. All right. So whatever you think, be aware of how your eye travels from square to square when they're gridded, you know. For example, you know, you might be, as was just spoken, just thinking about the yellow of the sun. And it's even present here, right? My eye could go, boom, it's up there too. But is there anything else that your eye picks out that has nothing to do with story, but it has to do with color or shape or texture? So you're seeing what isn't there?
No, I'm saying between these, there's no blue sky.
There is no blue sky. One more. Okay. So without even asking you for your choices, how does this affect your eye journey, EYE journey around this grid? Raid?
Personally, my eyes keep flickering between the one on the top right and the bottom left.
Okay, these guys.
Yeah. Just because they're both such like strong colors.
Hmm.
And also like not necessarily the same but like similar texture. One used chalk, the other one used pastel.
Wow, I didn't really. One used chalk and one used pastel, but in a way that they're at a diagonal. Do you think the placement is interesting too? That is your eyes going back and forth like that. Someone else having a different eye experience? I just want to share mine. Okay, so I'm seeing the triangle. I see the triangle here and the triangle there and the triangle there. And this is kind of a triangle here. So my eye's going triangle, I'm boom, you know, and I'm not really paying attention right now to the ones that don't have triangles because my eye is like, okay, I'm looking.
The palm trees to create a triangle.
Okay, all right. This is the next idea I want you to think about. Barbara is interested in the micro and macro. So the intense small view and the backing out big view. So I want you to think about the piece that you did and whether you could zero in on one aspect of it and then fill the whole square with that aspect. So you're thinking about zeroing in on something but making it big, or taking something small and making it big. And I'm only, gesturing because I'm not gesturing to one specific one. It's just, play with the idea of really zeroing in on something, but making it big, or backing out maybe to something that maybe feels already zeroed in on and maximize it. And good luck with those instructions. Okay, so you're going to start a new one. Your materials are up there, so get a new square, and then we're going to put that stuff up and take a look, okay? All right, so instead of just sitting around, start looking at the work that has gone up, and start to, and it's already good in a grid, so already you can start thinking about individual pieces or how the eye travels from piece to piece because of what your eye is noticing. We could say that if we look at these through the lens of geometry, then we're thinking about various shapes. So if we see a palm tree, we're also seeing curved lines. So maybe we could just think about that. We can do some rearranging, but I want to put your mind to what is next. So between now and our next meeting, what would you, if you're like, this is your body of work, like you're an artist, imagine this is your work and it's what you do all the time, and you were aching to evolve, like you've been working this way, what would you do next? What would be the next phase of your work? And I would like you to think about that. And that's why I asked you to save your scraps, because there might be clues for you in the scratch paper. Like you might be able to see where your next step in your artist or your vision is. So have I planted that seed in you? Because that's what we're doing at the beginning of next class. Plus, we're having some discussion about the reading. Are you ready to rotate? Yes. Let's do a rotation. So counterclockwise, if you remember what that is in the digital age. Careful as you navigate. We're very lucky to be able to actually talk to the artist. You know, when you go to look at art, have experiences with art, where, you know, the artist is not present. So this is kind of an unusual experience that we actually get to hear from the artist, and we can find some answers to our questions. We can find out about her life, and you know, we're thank you very much for allowing us to be here.
My pleasure, really my pleasure.
So what has it been like for you listening to us?
Oh my gosh, this feels like my mom's dining table, someone said about the wall over there. This one is like a game. I think that had to do with the bottom right corner there. Is this the same artist doing this, which was your question? And then someone said, this is messier, which I loved. That one wall seemed to be much messier than another wall. Something extends into what is next to it, and this one breaks it up. that was a very complicated discussion about this wall and the connection between the panels. I'm not exact, I think it was your comment, which I thought was very interesting. You were seeing a kind of rhythmic interruption or connection between things. I really loved hearing about that. This is the same thing redrawn upside down or over there. That looks like a flag looking out the window. Some things remind me of things from my life, visual travel of my eye from section to section, and inspired by South Asian culture. So these were just some of the comments that I was overhearing, and I enjoyed hearing about them all and writing them down. I'll tell you what it made me feel is that there is a real case that you made for being an abstract painter as opposed to a representational painter. Because in this particular instance, with the number of you that are here all at once saying, this looks like this reminds me of that, this is sort of like Manhattan. I mean, all of the different things, or the view out the window, all of these things that you had to say about it made me realize, well, that's what is so powerful about abstraction, because it is an invitation for you to bring yourself to the viewing and to invent and to make sense out of, and to make sense out of it in your own personal way. And that was very satisfying to hear, because I believe that too.
So how do you go about, like, you know, putting all this stuff into visual form? Like, what is that all about?
Well, there are many ways. There's travel and things that I might see. I was in Iceland this year, and so there's a lot of stuff in this book that has to do with being away, postcards that I collect. You've got a low view.
Oh yeah, hold them up. I think it would be good to hold
Sure. And then, I don't know, I was looking at my colored pencils, and I was looking at the preponderance of blue and green pencils that I have managed to collect, and suddenly I decided I needed to make a test of them all. So at the end of doing that, I looked at that scrap of paper and I thought, gee, that's really attractive, that's an idea. And I just cut it out and I put it in my book. So sometimes it happens from doodling, it happens from scraps. Sometimes I'm working out compositions, and the compositions, this is that pink painting up top there that I heard some of you speaking about. That entire wall was the result of a trip that I took to India, and the trip had a focus on textiles. It was a textile-based tour because I realized I was very interested in textiles and especially embroidery. And so I wanted to study it a little bit. And there was a person who organized tours to India. She was English. And it was a very small group for like 10 people. And it was just an opportunity for me to really meet some artisans and weavers and embroiderers and nomadic tribes and a lot of different kinds of people. So travel is one thing. Sometimes it's just a color idea, like the one that has that very large red shape in it. That was just an exhibition I saw of an artist's paintings, and I thought, gee, that is really a nice painting she made. Let's see if I even have it in here. I bet I do.
I'm noticing you have words, like you write stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there it is right there. On your...
No, that's my version.
Oh, your version.
Let's see if I can find her version. Oh, yeah, here's her version. A woman named Jill Moser had a very beautiful show. I liked it very, very much. Abstract painter, and this was her painting. And I thought, gee, these colors are really interesting together. And so what I did was I thought, I'm going to translate this painting into another abstract painting. I'm going to try to match the colors as I see them on this postcard, and I'm going to change, I'm going to try to hold true to the volumes of color. So there's mostly red in her version, so I wanted there to be mostly red in mine. So my biggest shape became the same color as her biggest shape. And so I was translating the idea, but trying to really recreate it in my own language of shapeness. So there's many, many ways I started playing with some stencils, and I decided a spiraling line was an interesting idea. I had used it before in my painting, and I wanted to just see what it would be like to recreate a painting with stencils. I abandoned the stencils almost immediately when I started painting it because I thought, that's stupid. And I then just went back to painting each one in its own character. I work with a material that's called encaustic. And this is what it looks like. It's these bricks of color. And I work on a hot plate. And so I just take this. This is why I didn't want you to touch it, because it's very hot at like 150 degrees. Oh, in fact, it's like 180. And so I just melt a puddle. And you can see that this now looks like any kind of paint, completely liquefied. This is a brush that I haven't used for several days. It won't move at all. But if I sit it on the hot plate for 15 minutes, it'll become just like the one I'm working with now. So instead of waiting for something to dry, I just wait for it to cool, and it cools almost immediately, just like candle wax does when you spill it on your table. So all you do is this. I'm just going to make a mark. I work horizontally on this table. And the reason for that is because I don't want gravity to pull against my work. Because after every stroke and every layer, I have to reheat the paint so it fuses to the coat that is underneath. So this is just like a demonstration panel to be able to show you what the technique is. And you're going to see I'm going to let it really fuse for a long time, and you'll see why I paint horizontally, because the wax will just start to move and slide. The heat gun is very hot, much hotter than the paint on my palette. And you'll begin to see it shine and slide. The quality of the paint loves to merge, and because it's melted, it slides and pools and puddles. But as you noticed on that large wall of South Asian influenced paintings, I was really controlling the paint. I was controlling the shapes, I was controlling the mark making, and I was even controlling the imitation of stitches. And that takes a lot of control, a lot of tiny little brushes, a lot of tiny everything. So, and that's done very, very slowly, something like this. I don't know that I can hold this up for you until I've done it. But like you can paint something that looks kind of like a stitch. And unlike this first thing that I fused and let go like this I'm going to be very gentle with. I just want it to merge to the layer that's underneath, and I can watch that happen when the wax gets shiny. I know that the underneath coat is grabbing the top coat, so that's enough. It's all about melting and cooling, melting and cooling.
So do you start out with a plan, and then does the plan change?
Yeah, sometimes. And sometimes the plan gets repainted too, you know. But on this wall particularly, there are many things that I was responding to that is textile based. I can show you a couple, and you'll find them on the wall right away. I have to get to the little white desk though to be able to do that. Here's the pink one. This is just an ordinary shopping bag. You buy something else and it might come in this. Here is a more complicated idea, but you will also find this on the wall. This is a sweet one. This is a child's practice piece. And then I kind of, yeah, it's a little, you can see, that's, yeah, it's been embroidered. And so I just blew it up large, and you can see that there. It's that big white triangle in that dark blue background. If you want work to have a lasting effect, and as a visual artist you really do, it's not a transient art form like, say, dance is. Yeah, you want it to be able to live past your own generation.
We're thinking about how the creative process, how that state of mind opens you up to possibilities, you know, that you might do this, you never know where life is going to lead you. And life is a woven thing. It's not just a rigid pathway.
Yeah.
So especially as we move through the semester, that's going to be something to really think about.
Part of it is kind of, you know, landing in that place where you really have a sense of who you are and feeling like, oh, well, this may be quirky, but I'm going to check it out more thoroughly. This may be a strange pursuit. This may not work at all, but I'm going to see if I can make this into something. And there is something very powerful about aligning yourself with those things that you feel passionate about.
After the in-person encounter with the work of art, an essential piece of the aesthetic education process is to take time to reflect or bend back into the entire experience, connecting the early activities of art making, meaning making, discussion and sharing of multiple perspectives in community to what happens in the presence of the work of art.
We are at the end of our project. The project, as we've envisioned it, is to create a version or a model of aesthetic education in action. And I'm just so happy that we've been able to do it together. And I'm wondering what you think about our experience today in your studio.
Well, for me, it was extremely satisfying, just as from the artist's point of view, that your students had so much to say, and that they were able to connect it to the workshop experience and bring up some of the activity ideas that you had presented with them, and seeing them enacted by me in the work that I make. So I think that is a key component of the preparation that we do in aesthetic education, and I thought you did that beautifully.
Thank you. It was gratifying when I heard students making the connections, because as I was building the workshop, you know, scaffolding, okay, this is what I want them to think about this. It's always based in the work of the artist. So I wanted them to I wanted to make sure that they were walking around in the room of the ideas that are in your work. You know, the idea of memory and place and abstraction and use of color and textiles, and all of these were, you know, they were critical pieces that I needed to get in there and have them work with, so that when they finally had the work of art experience, when they came face to face with the work, that they would, I guess, exist in it or have ownership of those ideas. And
I think what I observed in them, though I didn't want to intrude in any way, was how confident they were to speak of what it reminded them of, or what they saw in the work, or that it looked like, you know, their mother's tablecloth, or that this looks like a body, and the kind of sense making that they did, that reinforced several ideas that I hope are embedded in my work. I don't think that you can pull those ideas out of the work unless you've loaded some very particular and specific ideas into the work. So as an artist, I'm not interested in them unlocking the key to what I did in terms of the ideas that I put in, but the fact that they were able to extract ideas of their own from it enriches the experience for me as an artist, and I think personalizes the experience for them as viewers. And so when you talked about lending yourself to the work
Lending
of
your
art,
life to the work of art,
yes,
that's
yes,
Maxine.
and that was, I thought that was really beautiful, and also that was enacted here, so I was very pleased about that.
And I think that has to do with laying the groundwork in the workshops the pre-work of art workshops, where you craft activities that make participants very relaxed and able to share personal things. Because I just want to make sure that I say this, that the personal relevance factor is huge.
Yes, and I also think that it's student-centered. And so their ideas are the most important ideas when encountering the work of art. Not mine as the artist who made them, not yours as the instructor leading them, but their ideas. Yes. And I think that that is because of the way that the activities are framed and the emphasis you put on discussion and observation.
And listening to each other.
Yes, yes.
That's very important, that they hear each other's ideas and they accept them,
yeah.
And they become a community, really.
And it's enlarged because of the community. The ideas are enlarged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really, it all begins with basic questions that we want to make sure that come out at the end, that they're addressed throughout every activity in the workshop. So lines of inquiry that really are finely honed so that everything that's in the line of inquiry is in the work of art, everything that's in the line of inquiry is in all of the activities, and there's no extraneous stuff.
Yes, and I also think that the questions you asked around the work that they had made are the questions that you ask when you come to the studio and see the artwork. And so that kind of repetition enables them to feel confident about the observations that they are making. I think that
transfer activities.
Yes.
Exactly. And also to get them off the idea that the only way they're going to understand something is if they're told about it.
Right.
You know, the old going to the museum and reading the wall text, that's out the window. You know, it has nothing to do with the personal transaction.
Yeah, that was quite evident here today, that their first instinct was not to ask a whole lot of questions of the artist. I mean, you kind of laid that out as a parameter, but also that they were not interested in that really, or they were not, that was not the top of their agenda. They wanted to first look and have an experience of their own, and then have some basis on which to ask questions and to talk to me. And I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah. I think we did a great job, Barbara.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we're back. So now, and I hope you enjoyed the video. It was quite an adventure to make it and get my students to, they were so like, oh, we're on camera. They're so excited about it. Anyway, so now is a time for us to interact. I'm remembering now that I should open the participants panel, because if you wish to raise your hand, I'll be able to start. I think that Pam is also, or you know, if you want to speak, say anything, you know, and Barbara, please unmute yourself so you're part of this whole thing too.
Of course.
So any feedback or questions or connections?
There's some beautiful, beautiful comments in the chat. Excellent demonstration, Heidi. Beautiful playing. And what a beautiful, and a deep dive into the aesthetic education process. Lots of really wonderful comments that are of appreciation and enjoyment of your session. Thank you.
That whole piano playing thing came out of worrying about copyright issues. So choose music in the public domain played by me. You know, the videographer gave me this little music recorder and I recorded it, sent it back to him, express mail. It's just like this whole thing. I see Holly, you have your hand up, and then Amanda is after that. Unmute, Holly.
So one of the things I just briefly want to say is just how grateful I am, but I think we are, to have a real exposition of what a soup to nuts, if you will, kind of experience in an aesthetic education classroom. We've never really had that kind of recording before, and so you went the distance to film that with students in their process. And then reflecting afterwards, it's a rarity that we rarely do. It's not, again, not meant, as you said, as the end all and be all, but as a model that we can learn from and extrapolate from. But it was done beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you. It was in the moment, you know, it was a total expedition. Who knew what was going to happen? Amanda.
Hi, I first of all, I thank you so much. I really loved seeing this, and having worked with both of you, and you're both amazing teaching artists, and I've learned so much from both of you. I just really appreciated seeing the layers of the experience, from the students making and discussing and thinking about what they were doing, to then actually seeing the work of art and then unpacking that. And it just really kind of makes one appreciate the complexity of each layer, leading towards a depth of experience that these students are going to have for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, the notion of a reflective practitioner, to be paying attention to how you're doing what you're doing in the moment is powerful, you know, and maybe this video can inspire people to be such practitioners. Jan? Barbara, go ahead. Yes.
I just want to say one thing, which is normally in the model that we all used at Lincoln Center Education, and now Lincoln Center Institute, or was it the other way around? Yes, it's the other way around. You know, at that same place with all those names historically, we would go to a museum. But for the same reason that Heidi's playing the music, the focus of my artwork is what she can do for the convenience of her own class, because of the size of the classes and everything. It's easier for her to come to my studio than it is to go to a museum with a large group and have an in-depth discussion, as someone who's not part of the museum's education program. And also there were no copyright problems because I gave permission. So it's a slight variation, but of course we wanted to present a variation on the original Lincoln Center Institute and Lincoln Center Education form, because that's what we are hoping to embrace with all of you from around the world in your own practices and in your own variations on aesthetic education. Just want to say that.
Right. The rest of the semester, I perform with colleagues of mine in the classroom. So, and then tango dancers come into the classroom. So it makes it very personal. Jan.
Thanks to both of you. There was nothing phony about that. It was right there. We were walking through all that with you. And Barbara, I remember the line of inquiry as that incredibly important framing piece. And I wonder if you could walk us through maybe the iterations of that. How did that start? And then how did you arrive at those lovely lines of inquiry? The work in that is commendable.
Well, that's really a Heidi question, because she constructed the line of inquiry around my work. So it comes from her point of view and the gathering of information. So Heidi, why don't you answer that question?
Well, I knew what I wanted to have students think about. And so I don't know, you know, it's the agony of creating the line of inquiry, you know, like you start, how do I, in what ways, you know, and then what do you say next? And so concepts, so I thought of what do I want? I wanted to think about color. I wanted to think about, you know, visual elements, but I also want them to think about the idea of and patterns and abstraction and travel and memory. I thought memory was very important. It was like a two-parter line of inquiry. I had 2 lines of inquiry. So I wanted to bring it back to how does such an investigation help us to think about memory, how to think about experience, the nature of experience. So whether or not they did, I never asked them, like, did this, because I'm not sure if they would have like known what I was talking about the nature of experience, but I wanted them to pay attention to their experience of life. I mean, that is my main goal overall. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, and Heidi also looked at an artist statement that appeared on my website. And of course we're old friends, and so she has some ideas about the things that I'm trying to figure out in my work and the pursuit of my practice. So she had a real inside track. It's a lot. It's a lot easier than it is working with some of the deceased people that we might find in a museum setting, for instance.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I checked in. How does this sound, Barbara?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're on your own, you have your own journey, you have your own investigation. I'm just thinking of the units that I'm going to start with this next semester. It's exciting too, what do I want? I want to be able to, get students to understand how to enter other worlds. And so how am I going to do that? It's a wonderful, exciting and terrifying process. And
first, I want to say thank you so much. That was a really, really great video. I'm speaking from the perspective of teaching art in a museum setting as well. And I've noticed that a lot of the models that museums use begin with a tour of the art gallery and end with making influenced by it. And this was sort of the reverse. And I just sort of feel like deeper meaning is possible when you start in the classroom and explore concepts, and art making, and over several different activities, maybe even where students are putting their own lived experience into the work with whatever prompts are necessary. And then going to view an artist's work is, in my experience anyway, is more meaningful because then they're connecting with something outside of themselves, and it's just a beautiful thing to see. So that's sort of my first thought. I really like that reversal in what many mainstream museum models in art education practice. The other thing I wanted to point out is there are adults learning about aesthetic education, and in the clips where they were doing the making and making the art, they were 5-year-olds. Like all of them just kind of relaxed and were like that. That's something I observed from watching the video.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
A big element of the creative process that is pushed in the course is that there's play involved, and play is serious, but it's also, something that we don't do enough of as we grow, we're talking out of it. I know, Holly, I'm aware of time. Okay, so I can't talk too much. So Terry, you are next. And I think you're the only, oh yeah, we have a lot of more people. Okay, let's go.
I just want to say that it was really amazing to see Barbara as the work of art, not the work itself, her work, but her as a work of art. And to learn about you, Barbara, not as a teaching artist, but as a work of art, was really enlightening. And I just want to share, and I was talking with some of the people of the team, of Himas's team. It will be really interesting in sharing and talking about the different approaches, the different models that we've been creating, responding to the needs of what we are with the people that we're going to be working with. So that's something, a key element of aesthetic education. It's to respond to the needs of the people that you're going to be working with. Okay, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on. Belinda?
Yes, this makes me so happy, and I have a quick question. Moving from, well, you talked about the model or the difference of taking the students with the artist and being there, as opposed to the Lincoln Center model we have. We don't spend that much time with the students asking questions and being with the artist. Is there any like highlight that you want to point out the USTAs find opportunities in this model or in this experience, as opposed to of only seeing the work of art and not engaging so much with the artist through the creative process?
Well, I'm not involved. Like I'm my own boss, so I can kind of do what I want. When you're a TA in an organization, you kind of have to go with the flow there, and so it's fun to be your own boss. I don't, but what we're suggesting here in this model is that you can be massaged. You can apportion more time to an interaction with the creative artists that are present. But that's really up to, I think, the organization, right, Barbara?
Yeah, and I also think that it has to do with the focus in your course, which is you're hoping to bring out the creative process in your students.
Right.
And so she's presenting them with a few models of people who are involved in a creative process, right? What it might look like, and what they might have to say about it, and the satisfaction that comes from pursuing one. I think that that's very important in terms of Heidi's course. And I also think that, it's always great to be able to talk to the artist, but it's not necessary to match up with what they're doing. And I just want to emphasize that big time, because that's something that I really learned from Maxine, which is, there is the wall text, but there is that interaction, that transaction that can happen when someone really attends to the work of art. And what they get from it is that aesthetic experience, which is extremely personal and very much their own. So I think that that's an important part of any aesthetic education experience.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
John, and then Heather, and then I will respond to chat questions and comments as we move outside of this. Okay. So, right, John. Hi, nice to see you.
See you too. Yeah. Can you hear me? I've been having trouble with my audio. Okay, thank you so much for this, Barbara and Heidi and Holly, for organizing this. I really felt the spirit and the presence of Maxine, and her love of collaboration. What she talked about, the space between you and the Monet on the wall, right? I remember that line. And in this case, the students were the Monets, but I just love being in the classroom and realizing, like, this is the landscape that has given my life meaning, and so many of our lives meaning, in the past. And as we're still coming out of a pandemic, I love seeing those chairs, and, in my case, I teach with film. I show a lot of film, and, and I love sitting in the back of the room and seeing the aesthetic, encounter between students in the film, and then the dialogues we have afterwards, So yeah, this can be applied to many different realms of education, and which is so important to keep alive now. I think we have to remember that. And it's this push towards STEM and technology. The humanities and the arts really do matter. And I think you really, prove that here. So thank you.
Thanks so much, John. And really quick, Heather, if you can unmute and say something.
Yeah, my question is a very mundane one, and that is, as a professor, I really, really enjoyed your presentation, and I too have the freedom to, kind of do what I want in a classroom, but sometimes I'm cautious about reaching out to artists because of the issue of the payment and their—
Oh, I know it. Let me tell you, the university,
I'm wondering.
The university supports minimally, and I pay the rest. I spend the money, Heather.
Personally?
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so that's fascinating. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it's a complex issue, right?
Yep. It used to be better, but now nobody has the money anymore. So it's important enough to me I just do it. I don't care. People need to be paid. Okay, Holly, turning it back to you.
Thank you, Heidi. Big hand to you. Yeah.
Barbara.
And Barbara. Really, really valuable work.